Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of 9 to 5 Faith. I am excited to introduce you to my new friend, Jacob. Just like me, Jacob is a Californian who made the big move out to Arizona, and he has such a great story to share. He talks about moving to a new place and diving into pro-life advocacy and balancing his day job with his creative passions. I know you're going to love Jacob's unique perspective, and you're just going to walk away feeling inspired. So sit back, relax, and get ready for an engaging chat on this episode with Jacob Aiery. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And also, I was like, let's hit the record button before we dish about California and about Arizona, because I have feelings and you have too. And you are one of the many transplants who are new to Arizona. I will say I'm in a neighborhood, and I think there's only two of us who are actually moved from a house to Arizona. The
Oh,
rest of
wow.
them are all out of
And
state.
I would like to assure any Arizonans that are listening, I will not ruin your state by voting incorrectly. I've
You're not
I've learned
going
my
to
lesson.
California or Arizona. That is if you are unfamiliar, there is a trending tag bumper sticker thing, and it says, "Don't California my Arizona."
Oh, yeah, yeah. I
So
saw us, my wife and I went to Scottsdale. We saw a big sticker. It looked like just plastered on a wall somewhere.
yeah, it happens, but it's okay. All are welcome here. But that is just a fun ongoing joke that so this is your first summer here.
It is, yes.
How are you dealing with it?
Whew. Yeah, I grew up in Texas where it gets very hot in the summers, but I've been to, and I lived in California for a while, so I have a little bit of training, if you will. But yeah, this is a different level. It's definitely an
Yeah.
upgrade from my previous experiences.
Yeah. Well, also, I say I love the South. I love visiting there. I have family there, but I say I will never move there. I mean, unless God picks me up and drops me off there because of the humidity, the bugs, and then there was just one other thing that I added to that list, and I can't remember what. Oh yeah, the roads. The roads are god awful there. Um,
Oh yeah,
Texas
constant
might
construction in Texas.
Yeah, Texas might be a little bit better because I feel like the roads are a little bit newer there, depending on where you go. But my mom lives in Georgia, and I mean, if you look at Arizona, it's on a
I've
grid
driven through
system.
Georgia.
Everything's a grid system.
Yeah.
Georgia is terrifying. So, so tell us a little bit about what you do, what's your 9 to 5, who you are, all that good stuff.
So, my name is Jacob. I host a YouTube channel called Studio Jake, where I talk about pop culture topics that cover film, television, novels, anime, all from sort of a more Christian perspective. I also have a website, studiojakemedia.com, where I write reviews. It's really interesting. Back in, oh geez, 2012, I actually left another Christian a media website because they censored one of my articles, and this frustrated me. And the back
Mm.
and forth with the editor, I then he kind of leveraged that, and I had called another movie to review, but then he said, "Oh yeah, we're giving this to one of our other people because they actually called it before you, but all their stuff was you were able to see for all the writers of who called what, and it was obvious I had called it."
Right.
And so after that, I left, and that's how I started Studio Jake Media was through that, and then eventually in 2016, I added on the YouTube channel.
Very
But
cool.
my 9 to 5 is I'm a marketer. I flex that all the time in my videos.
Yes.
I talk about marketing mistakes, like I talked about the Bud Light. I this morning
I
I did a
love it.
video about this is Thursday, so I did a video about comic book companies and their marketing mistakes and stuff like that. So that's sort of my 9 to 5. I used to work for the Daily Wire. I was a marketer for them,
Okay.
and now I work for Live Action, which of course is one of the
Oh,
largest pro-life
gotcha.
organizations, and I love
So
working for
cool.
them. Yeah, yeah, they're kind of my 9 to 5, if you
Very
will. I love
cool.
working for them and
That's
working with
fun.
Lila.
That's so much fun. Oh my gosh. You're a cool new friend to have. Oh
Thank
my
you.
gosh. Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I'm a marketer too, which is why I'm like digging all of this stuff. But I work in tech, so I'm like, I don't get to work for like fun organizations like that. I mean, I think it's fun. I feel like there's, even though you're saying you were slightly censored, that the censorship doesn't go as far as when you're in like tech and secular
Well,
companies.
with that organization, that was way before I worked for Daily Wire and live action,
Yeah.
obviously. But that one was what's the word? Their heads were so much in the clouds that they didn't really have any grounding. They
Mm.
had no ground to stand on. That was kind of
Like
the
kind of a out of touch.
Yes. So like what the
Gotcha.
rub was, I did a review about a movie about a thief, and the movie was definitely trying to glamorize being a thief. And I said this in my review, and I said, hey, you know what, this movie, and it wasn't really that good of a movie, just being honest, but I said
Yeah.
basically, this is a good movie to watch if you want to watch popcorn. It's like watching the Fast and the Furious. Those movies definitely glamorize criminals, right?
Right.
And I was like, so it's just basically like watching one of those movies. It's just a
Yeah.
B action movie if you want to turn off your brain. And
Yeah.
that's what got censored was, and they
Huh.
put this huge. So I said, it's not that great of a movie, and it glamorized criminality. Something things to consider. But
Right.
they still censored me and put this huge disclaimer on the review that says this website does not condone criminal activity. I'm like, my review didn't condone criminal activity. I just said if you want to just turn off your brain and eat some popcorn, you might enjoy
Right.
it.
Gotcha.
So, but
Gotcha.
yeah, I think they
Yeah.
eventually, after I left, I think they got someone else to review it, and so there's a different review up. My
Yeah.
review isn't there. It was a
Gotcha.
Jason Statham film. I can't
Okay.
remember the title for the life of me right now.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
But yeah, that is what started me on the journey of Studio Jake Media, and I started reviewing
Gotcha.
film,
Fun.
television. I'm more into anime now than I was then, but I did
Okay.
review a very short anime that only ran for like 25 episodes, which if anyone knows anime, that is a short anime. It was called
Okay.
Kaze no Stigma. That was my
Okay.
very first anime to review, which is kind of
Gotcha.
an urban fantasy type anime. But
I know
but anyway, so
nothing
that's
of
when
that stuff.
oh,
So
really?
yeah.
Well, like I
Yeah.
said, in 2016, that's when I grafted on the YouTube channel. And
Yeah.
that is really when I started talking more about television and anime. It was mainly
Gotcha.
film and film news early on. And
Yeah.
then I would mix in stuff like I always do these themes, like I have 10 scriptures for courage, and then now I'm doing 10 translations of a particular verse, and I'll go through my 10 favorite
Nice.
translations of
That's
like John
cool.
3:16 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
Very
those
cool.
are that has been my favorite of the church themes, is finding all how these different English translations translate a particular verse. You might be
Yeah.
surprised how much are the same versus how many are are
For
different.
sure. For sure. Yeah. I just did a Instagram live where I do this practice, like my study. I'm gonna get so much shade for this, but I personally don't like devotionals. I think
Interesting.
I like to get a little bit deeper into the text. And so I love verse mapping, which is like annotating an entire verse. If like you think back to like AP English in high school, like that's what it was. And so I was verse mapping on my Instagram live, and I had 3 translations, and there were like 2 words that were different from this one verse compared to 3 translations. So I definitely understand that, but also I like want to get in on this film stuff because it sounds like so much fun.
It is.
And also I like had this like major beef with I saw it was like a CBS report of Sound of Freedom.
Oh, yes.
And their review of the movie, I was just like,
It's
yo,
stunning.
it was terrible. And I'm like their criticism was it didn't show the aftercare and the different types of trafficking, how it can happen. I'm
Oh,
like,
geez.
it's a 2-hour movie. Like, do you want this to be like a 12-hour movie? Like, I was just gobsmacked. I was like, in what world do people think that this is also going to see every single thing from every single side? Like, I was
It makes
gobsmacked.
Sound of Freedom is very interesting. Like I haven't really seen this level of feedback, and I'm going to date myself a little bit, but since God's Not Dead. Now, when
Yeah.
God's Not Dead came out, I was a youth pastor, and
Okay.
I defended the first one, not so much two and three; those are very cheesy. But I'll defend the first God's Not Dead, and it drives people nuts. But I remember when that movie came out, there was a big backlash from it, especially with the Chinese element to it, because one of the characters
Okay.
was a Chinese student who was from communist China, and it was about how this whole
Okay.
God's Not Dead thing is affecting him. I
Yeah.
remember that, but even that kind of pales in comparison to Sound of Freedom. It is
Yeah.
what's
Did
shocking to me.
mainstream really pick up God's Not Dead though?
Not they ignored it
Okay.
for the most part, but there was some elements that
Okay.
picked it up,
Gotcha.
especially because it had like Kevin Sorbo's in it. He's a big name. Dean Cain
Yeah.
is in it. With the Sound of Freedom, what's interesting to me is now I don't know a lot about Tim Ballard, so everything I say
Yeah,
about
maybe.
him, this is
Right.
just I know that he has some controversy surrounding the movie's about him. That's who Jim Caviezel plays in
Right.
the film. And so I understand if you say, hey, I don't believe Tim Ballard. I don't believe his stories. I think he exaggerates. That's fine. He's a man. He's open to criticism.
Right.
I have no reason to doubt him, just being honest. But I actually ran into people who were like, I don't think human trafficking is an issue. And Sound of Freedom, their criticism, and these are Christians, by the way, they said
Yeah.
their criticism of Sound of Freedom is that it exaggerates an issue. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Are you insane right now? That makes no sense. They're
Oh gosh.
in West or yeah, in East Africa. Christians are being rounded up by human traffickers who are, radical Islamic extremists.
Yeah.
We're seeing in China, they're kidnapped because they have a woman's shortage because of their one-child policies
Yeah.
issue. They're actually stealing women from Korea and Vietnam to bring to China to basically be mail order brides.
Right.
And you're going to sit there and tell me you didn't like the movie because you don't like Tim Ballard and because you don't think it's a real issue. I've never heard that
Yeah.
angle for the movie. But like you were saying, the as I call them, the corporate press, so
Right.
CBS, MSNBC, and
NBC.
all
Yeah.
that, they were just trying to rip the film apart.
Yeah.
And I saw it. I wrote a review on it. It wasn't a perfect movie. I don't think
Right.
since The Godfather we've had a perfect movie, but maybe with the exception of The Dark Knight. But I think with Sound of Freedom, I still think it was a good movie. It was well financed. It was
Yeah.
well shot. The budget, they did it on a shoestring budget, which is
Right.
incredible these days.
Right.
Now it feels like every movie you're hearing has $100 million budget, and it's like, who has the money for that? For one
Right.
thing,
Yeah.
it's just stunning to me. But
I
yeah, that
was
was
I
shocking.
was so shocked like that their complaint was mainly it didn't show every little detail.
Hmm.
And I'm like, since when do Hollywood movies show every little detail? Like, and also I
Right.
think there's like for the people who are saying like, oh, that's like over dramatization and like things like that. Being California and Arizona, we know how serious that trafficking, especially up through Mexico and Central America, comes to. Like if you're talking like the news, who's like all the way up in like New York, right? Like those people are pretty far removed from like the actual trafficking risk that is happening like at the border states. So
It's so true. Like I said, I was a youth pastor, and I
yeah,
pastored in a town called Lumberton, Texas, which is in between Houston and Louisiana. Basically, they
okay,
would call that a conduit. It was there. In fact, Beaumont, which is a university town, again in between Houston and Louisiana, they had several rescue organizations that are based there because of that. So just to
yeah,
say, like I said,
out here too.
if you want to criticize Tim Ballard, fine, he's a man. No
Yeah.
man is above criticism except
The
for, our
actual
Lord and Savior.
cinematic, right? In
Right,
the actual cinematic like
right.
execution of
But
it.
exactly, to say all that, it's just preposterous to me.
Yeah, yeah, I feel you. And like I'll say this one last thing and then we can actually move on. But like especially because Phoenix hosted, I mean, maybe 7 years ago, we hosted the Super Bowl fact check me. I know I'm wrong on the date, but we hosted the Super Bowl in Phoenix, and then it's coming back again, I think next year, or the year. Yeah, it's next year. And there's all this like buzz around the influx of sex trafficking when like big events like the Super Bowl come into that town. And y'all, like, it is so real. And I remember my friend, we were in college, they like, what they did is they equipped a bunch of volunteers to go out kind of into these seedy places. And it's like parking lots. Like, it's, not putting anyone in danger, but you were there with someone else, and like they were watching, and all they had to do, like, they weren't allowed to intercept. And she said, like, within an hour, she saw 5 guys like come and go, like 5 Johns. And I was just like, man, it's real and it happens. And if you come at me, I have receipts. Okay. So you now work for live action. That's so exciting and so awesome. Tell us a little bit about like what you do, because they are a faith-based organization, right?
They are or I should say we are a secular organization.
Okay, it is secular. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
Although I've most of the staff, including myself, are Christian.
Right.
But
the
Lila
organization
is very
itself,
hardcore Catholic. She is very Catholic.
Yeah, I knew that like there are like very like faith professing people who like are a part of the organization, but I didn't know if the organization itself, like Students for Life, that's a Catholic organization, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, I think I don't know their status, but I know for sure their founder, she is definitely again a very strong Christian, very vocal about it.
So knowing that, like, I mean, you're amongst other Christians in that workplace, but you're not necessarily speaking to a Christian audience with what you do. How do you kind of balance the two?
Well, for when it comes to pro-life issues, I have found that the best arguments are sort of showing the humanity of the child. Now, obviously, me being a Christian, I believe that child has a soul, has a spirit from the moment of conception. But how do you translate to someone who isn't a Christian or is a Christian, but they tend to be, but they are, how should I put this? They're secular in their walk. So they say, oh, I'm a Christian, but they may not have the formation or the training.
Yeah.
So what live action specifically tries to do is try to make media that will appeal to that person, that sort of more, I hate to use this word, but I don't know how else, but that casual person who, where we can show, like, we had huge success with a video we did called Baby Olivia, which we actually had medical scientists show and approve of it to be sure that it was accurate, but it shows how the baby is formed from the moment of conception until birth. And it intersperses like the highlights, like when the baby has fingers, when the baby has a heartbeat, when you can detect brain activity. And another key element of that is showing just how gruesome the abortion industry is.
Yeah.
And even when I went through many political evolutions in my time, as most people do, I've kind of settled now. But even when I would say I was more politically left, and let's be honest, most people who are politically left tend to be more pro-abortion, right?
Yeah.
Even when I was politically left, I was not pro-abortion. I was pro-life. And I even was a part of a campus group called, at the college I went to, their mascot was the Cardinals. So our group was the Cardinals for Life. And for me, it was just seeing how gruesome abortion is. It's not a pretty thing. I remember several years ago, I think I was still in college when this came out. There was this infamous video, and it was a woman who was recording herself having an abortion. The only problem is they only showed her upper half. So the whole time they're showing this abortion, they're not actually showing what's going on with the child. They're just showing her, and she's like making like these ooey gooey sounds, like she's being relaxed and all this. And it's very off-putting. And I actually told my sister, because it was so funny. My sister was even like, what do you think? I said, it's clearly a fake video, because
Yeah.
if it was real, for one thing, there's no abort. They had like three people operating her. Most abortion, I call them mills. Most
Yeah.
abortion mills have one person and maybe a tech there, and
Right.
sometimes it's not even a doctor
Right.
doing this gruesome procedure. So that's kind of the two prong approach, to showing the humanity of the child and also showing the gruesome nature of the abortion industry. And I tend to, in my personal life, I have seen that that is what win people that will win people over, is those two
Mm-hmm.
aspects of it, especially if they're not Christian. Now, typically, if they're a Christian, you can appeal to them on a spiritual level. You
Right.
can, Jeremiah, in the book of Jeremiah, I believe it is, God says, "I knew you before I formed you in the womb." So
Right.
typically, you can reach out to them on that level. But when you're dealing with someone who doesn't have that background, those two arguments I find tend to work the best.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And how is it? I mean, I'm sure like just doing kind of the work and being, I guess, like saturated in I mean, a lot of gruesomeness, also like a lot of wins and a lot of beauty in terms of like when a child is saved. But how do you, I guess, wrestle with the evil that is
Yeah.
going on in your work, like not the work that you're doing, but in that industry, I guess. How do you kind of like wrestle with that?
Well, for me personally, I find comfort in Jesus. Whenever I remember we did this, another organization did this undercover sting operation where they rescued five babies that had been aborted alive. They were
Yeah.
born alive, and then they were basically, these babies were murdered. It was called
Right.
Justice for the Five, and we helped
Yep.
amplify that.
Yep.
And I remember seeing those children. What was done to them was incredibly gruesome. And being used to work for the Daily Wire, I had a lot of connections in conservative media. So I was reaching out to people like, "Hey, we need to talk about this. We need to blow up this story." And I
Right.
actually got replies from people. I'm not going to say any names, so I don't want to embarrass them. But they're
Yeah.
like, "This is too gruesome. Our audience can't handle this." Like,
Mm,
that was the reply. And it troubled me, for it still troubles me sometimes. Every once in a while I'll get reminded of that, and I'll see those
yeah.
babies' faces, and it's very I always find comfort in the fact that, like I said, Jesus is my savior. I take time and I pray. And sometimes it's a matter of, you just got to take a deep breath,
Yeah.
because and I don't think that this is just my opinion, but just saying, in my belief, I believe abortion is a moral evil, and you have
Yeah.
to and sometimes when it comes to evil, you have to know you're going to face those things, and you just have to
Mm,
take a breath, and you have to get down, and not get down in the dirt with the abortion industry, because no one
yeah.
wants to do that. But you have to
Right.
get down, and remember that what you're doing is going to prevent more children from suffering another horrible fate like that.
Yeah. And how do you like I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, but um in this type of work, I I'd I'd venture a guess that you experience like a lot of spiritual warfare.
Oh yes, yeah, definitely.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a lot of one of the I remember one time, the writer of Wild at Heart, John Eldridge,
Mm-hmm.
he said that the devil uses three tactics against you. It's typically, he'll pretend he's not there, then he'll get intimidating, and then he says, "Hey, let's have a truce."
Mm-hmm.
And he's and I would say that those three waves are probably the most accurate way to experience the type of truce. I think one of the things that, every once in a while I'll get, the Bible describes the devil's attacks as flaming arrows. One of the arrows that I get hit with sometimes is doubt. Can you save more children?
Yeah.
And one of the things that keeps me going is, as far as that is concerned, is the emails, the DMs that I see of people saying, "Hey, because of this video, I chose to have my baby, and I'm going to put it up for
Mm,
adoption instead of instead of aborting, or I'm going to keep my baby.
Yeah.
I remember another organization did a sting where they went undercover in an abortion clinic, and the person who was the sting actually started talking with a woman who she had had three babies, so she was having a fourth,
Mm,
and she didn't even tell her husband that she was pregnant. She was just going to abort her baby because she didn't want number four. Well, the sting person now had a choice. Do I discourage her because I'm technically undercover here? And
right.
credit to the sting reporter, they actually, said, hey, maybe you should not do this because it's not fair to the child and it's not fair to the baby. And you can even hear as the sting person is leaving the mill, she is praying like, dear God, please save this baby, please save this baby.
Yeah.
And she reported later that the woman hadn't decided to go ahead and have this fourth child. So I think
Mm,
that is, it's victories like that and hearing those stories of, not just outside of live action. This was a totally different organization. I don't
yeah.
even think it was technically a pro-life. I think it was a media organization, a
What
conservative media
I
organization. I
think
can't
it
remember
was
who it
Project
was.
Veritas, was it?
It might have been Project Veritas, and
Yeah, I think so.
it was just amazing.
Yeah.
Pre them kicking James O'Keefe out, but it was just an amazing experience to watch me as someone who is in the pro-life world go say yes, that is a victory, and that's why I
Yeah.
do what I do, because I want to see as few babies as possible die under an abortionist or on an abortionist table.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like what going back to like what you were saying earlier of like when you're talking to people who maybe, I mean, and I would even say people who are of faith, but especially those who are not Christian, the bet like faith-based arguments don't work because they don't believe what you believe. Like if they believe what you
Right.
believe, then yeah, maybe it might work. But really just getting to kind of the core. Do you ever like struggle with that balance of like you just want to be like, but Jesus. I mean, I would find that like urge to be like, but
Oh
just
yeah,
wanting to
yeah.
tell them.
One time I was at a rally and I was wearing a pro-life shirt, and this woman approached me and started quizzing me. And yeah, I wanted to go, but Jesus, but I kind of figured out but early on that she wasn't a Christian just by the way she was speaking. I was like, I don't think this woman is a Christian, so I don't think I'm
Mm,
gonna meet her on this wavelength. What was crazy about her argument was she was saying poor countries are overpopulated, and so they need abortion. And I was like, whoa lady.
yeah.
And so her I was more approaching it from a human rights perspective, like just because
Right.
people are poor they don't deserve to have children, or their children don't deserve to live. Like that doesn't make any sense to
Yeah.
me. And I don't know if I won her over because after we talked for just a solid 15 minutes at least, and she
Mm,
kind of just walked away in a huff. There was no resolution really, I would
right.
say, with her. But if I would say that I hope that I at least planted the seed in her and I changed her mind. Like I said, she didn't say you've changed my mind. She didn't say, but she just kind of, the last thing I said was, I feel like you're arguing with me in circles, because she kept repeating the same things over and over again. And then that's when she kind of huffed at me and walked away.
Gotcha.
And I was just kind of like, I don't, and to be clear, this lady was not rude. She was
Right.
not, she was combative, but she was respectful. So it wasn't like we were like in a shouting match or whatever. I don't want to make it all dramatic, like
Right.
we see on some of these videos that go viral. It wasn't
Yeah.
anything like that. We were both
Yeah.
very calm and respectful. And like I said, she was a bit combative. But when I said I feel like you're arguing in circles, that's when she kind of went and just walked off. And I was like, oh, I guess we're done talking.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. May God be with you.
Yeah, exactly. Go with God.
And God and also with you. Um, so like when it comes to kind of being saturated in this industry, because like while like I have had to put up guardrails with myself, just for like my own like clear headspace and like really not to get mad at the world. I've had to, turn off the news and kind of limit that for myself. How do you combat that? And how do you like find the way to maybe like hang up your hat at the end of the day and like move forward?
I always make Sunday my day of rest.
Mm.
Even Jesus rested, and since I do social media marketing, I can't say that I totally block out social media on
Yeah,
Sunday,
I got
but
you.
I tend to usually on Sunday the only thing I do is I share out the article that I wrote for the day and maybe share out one of my videos from the week. But
Hmm.
I try not to get involved in any sort of online arguments, or like I said, I don't record on Sundays.
Yeah,
Sometimes a podcast will ask me to come on as a guest, and I'll do that. But typically, I just strictly take Sunday as a day of rest. My wife and I, outside of services, we don't really even go out on Sunday.
yeah,
Occasionally, we might go out for Sunday dinner, but that's just how. And it's just amazing to me how God set up everything. Pick a day of rest, preferably Sunday.
yeah,
That is the Lord's day. But yeah, that's what I do is I just take that one day out of the week, and that's when I renew my mind. That's when I read my Bible, more so than I do the rest of the week. And I just relax. There's a live stream that I watch that I put on that's like 2.5 hours long. I'll
mm,
typically just watch that in the afternoon, and then have dinner, and maybe watch a movie or a TV show at the end of the day. But that's just strictly for rest.
yeah.
And that Saturday is usually date day for my wife and I.
Oh,
So
fun.
so we usually go out, but Sunday is our rest day. That's when
Yeah.
we're all
If you
relaxing.
need good,
Anything.
fun places out here, I will let you know. I have a laundry list of some of my favorite places in Phoenix. So
Oh, sounds good.
I'll let you know. Those are always really great. Yeah. Do you ever struggle with though, like carrying the day with you or like carrying it home with you or like I don't know. I feel like a lot of the times when you see like really negative and gruesome things, like it's hard to kind of snap out of that.
It depends on the day. Like with Justice for the Five, when that campaign was going on, yes, it was really hard and it was a struggle. Like I said, I tend to, and this is what I tell people: there's nothing wrong with having hobbies. So as you can see, I have hobbies. You can see my hobby behind me,
Yeah.
but I don't let my hobby consume me, because that can be a negative too. This is something I
Mm.
always caution people about: is if you, but I think God gave us hobbies to do, just something fun that we can do to relax. And because we often just think of rest as just quiet prayer time and sleep, but I actually think
Yeah.
that God gives us more ways to rest, and
Yeah.
like having a hobby. Peter was a fisherman, although that was his job. I guess you could say that was his vocation.
Right.
But but I feel like that's something that I do to help, that helps me, as I just have a few moments to let myself escape from that for an hour or two, and just let it dive in. So I don't let myself watch anything high stress at night, because
Mm.
for a while, even a year ago, I would say I was watching like really gruesome true crime stuff. I'm a true crime junkie. I don't
Same.
armchair detective like the people on Reddit do,
Yeah.
but I enjoy it as a genre. And I
Yeah.
was watching stuff at night, and it was giving me nightmares. I was getting
Yeah.
nightmares that my wife was being kidnapped, and that, or my parents back home in Texas were, something horrible was happening to them. And of course, I'm in another state. I can't do anything about it.
Right.
So I try not to watch anything that would create any sort of stress on me at night. I try to just watch relaxing stuff,
Yeah.
or sometimes I don't even watch shows. I'll just put on, some sort of ambiance thing. Like yesterday, there's this really great YouTube channel that does ambiance across America, and it's literally just a drone flying over like all these state parks in the United
Very
States, and
cool.
they have like some soft music playing in the background. I think it's
Nice.
called USA Ambiance or something.
Oh,
So shout
it's
out to
cool.
them. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, I love it. It's like 10 hours
It's so
long, and
funny because
so
my husband is the same way of like putting on just like random live streams. His big thing, I don't know the name of the live stream, is watching planes. Like
oh yeah, I've done that too.
there's like there's like guys who set up at LAX and just like 3 times a week they record like 8 hours of planes coming and
Wow.
taking off. And so like sometimes we'll have the planes on the TV, the newest thing, which actually I think is really entertaining is it's not it's the Park Service. They
Hmm.
have like a bear cam in Alaska,
Oh,
and so
wow.
they like show like the bears by the stream catching fish, and it's the
Nice.
coolest thing. And it's just a live stream that we just he turns it on for our dogs because he's that type of person. But also, it is very enjoyable and strangely relaxing as well.
Yeah, Pluto TV has a channel and it's just all puppy cams. They change them every hour, so it's from different sources too.
Yeah,
So I love it. Those are really fun. My wife especially, she loves things like nature and ones
yeah,
with animals and stuff. I tend to
yeah,
like the flying over stuff because
yeah,
I like that, just that view of seeing things from a bird's eye. But yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot of great ways to just relax, where there's
Yeah.
not like a lot of high energy and stress.
Right, right. We have like an Apple TV or whatever. So like the screensaver, I guess, for the Apple TV where it shows just like a bunch of different sceneries. So it'll do like the Great Wall and Dubai and all those things. My
That's really
husband gets
cool.
so into it where he's like we'll both be in the same room and he'll be like, "Where's that?" And I'm like, I don't know. San Francisco? I have no clue. Um So take me through like what I mean, also given that like you just kind of moved out here, but like, do you have a church community? Do you have a faith community that you're plugged into? What does that look like for you?
Not yet. My wife and I are still searching. We go to different places every week, and we it's really interesting. My wife and I have a sort of different taste. We're both Pentecostal, but my wife
Okay.
is very like charismatic, and so she wants like the free flowing stuff. And I tend to be, for me, it's all about the message. Like I can
Yeah.
sit through Gregorian chants even if the message is solid.
Right.
So that's kind of how we are, and so we're trying to find one that's a good balance because we'll go to one
Gotcha.
and she'll really like the worship, but I don't think the pastor is milk toast, So, but we've hit a couple, and
Fair enough.
we did go to one out in I can't remember what it was called, but there was one that we both liked. It was just kind of a drive
Okay.
from where we are,
Gotcha.
and
Gotcha.
I don't want to dox this, but from our position, it was a little bit
Yeah.
of a drive,
Yeah.
and but we're still looking, and we're hoping to get plugged into one soon.
Yeah. Well, after we finish recording, I have a recommendation that a lot of my
Okay.
friends go to. So, because ironically enough, all of my friends live on that side of the city, and so they are an hour and a half away from me,
Oh,
and
wow.
I am very unhappy about it because I'm like, like, can y'all like not be that far? Like, I would like to see my nieces and nephews one day. Like that that would be nice. So yeah, they are all an hour and a half away from me at least. So I feel you. I'm like, did I choose the wrong side of town? No. Uh anyways. Well, yeah, that's good that you're still getting plugged in out there and that you are making that kind of a priority because I feel like when you move and kind of like resettle into everything that is a significant part of it and it
I
takes
have a relative who's a pastor. So if some reason we don't get out, we typically put on his church because he live
gotcha.
streams. But
Nice.
yeah, we're still looking for a church home for here.
Yeah, yeah, very cool, very cool. And like I'm assuming you work from home.
I do, yes.
Yeah, and your wife does as well. Or
Yes, yes.
very cool. How has that been in terms of both working from home? Was it like a growing experience? I'm speaking from my own experience in that like getting me and my
Sure.
husband both to work from home was like was its own kind of thing.
It was a little bit of adjustment for me. My wife has always worked from home, so it wasn't. She always had that experience, but for me, it was. I will admit, it was a little tough at first. I'm used to the 8 to 4, 9 to 5 sort of hours
Yeah.
and I used to, especially in LA, but the whole lockdown situation kind of made it. I don't want to say. Well, yeah, I'll just say I made it a necessity where you would
Yeah.
have to work from home.
Right.
And for live action was very accommodating with this. And so that's why I was able to move out here to Phoenix. as far as I know, I think I'm the only one in Arizona. We have people all over the country,
Right.
but um, I think with the lockdown situation, it just made it where if you were to tell people that would have to move to a different location, most people don't want to do that. I think
Right.
I would have if a company says, "Hey, Jacob, we like you, but you need to come into the office. Oh, but you'd have to move." I would be okay with that, depending on where it was.
Right.
I
Right.
wouldn't want to move off to some blue state where jackboots are running around and whatnot. But depending on where it was, I would be okay with it. But for me, working from home was a little bit of an adjustment. I made myself an office because part of my problem was I kept getting distracted by things.
Yeah.
So my dog's going crazy. When I've had it when our the previous place we lived, one of our neighbors also works from home, and they played really loud music for the first couple of
Mm,
weeks. Eventually, I think someone said, "Hey, just so you know, a lot of us are working from home, and so you can't play that music loud anymore," because
yeah.
he had toned it down.
Nice.
But that was a little bit of a adjustment. But once I got used to it, I actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
I can get up and get coffee whenever I want to. I can, and stuff like that. And
Very true.
I
You can
remember,
run laundry. That's
yes,
my
yeah.
biggest thing. You can run laundry all day long.
For it when I remember one time I woke up to start my day, and I let my dog out to go to the bathroom. My wife wasn't up yet, and um normally what I do is I let the dog out, then I get dressed, and then I make sure he's fed and everything, and then I start my day with him. But this particular morning, he had distracted me, and so I had started work, and I realized I had a meeting coming up. And I looked down and I'm still in my pajamas and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do this meeting in my pajamas. So I had to like run like 5 minutes before the meeting to change into something more appropriate. So that was a lot of
Oh,
fun.
goodness.
But
Yeah.
so once I got used to that groove, it was actually nice working in my pajamas because it was super comfortable,
Very
but
true.
definitely not meeting appropriate, even
Yeah.
on Zoom.
Yeah, I gotcha. I remember like even before like the shutdown and everything when I had work from home days, like it's just funny because you think like, oh, I just want to lay in bed all day and like work from my laptop. And that lasted for like a couple months.
Mhm.
And then you're like, okay, my back hurts, my neck hurts. I need something a little bit more permanent here.
Yeah, exactly.
So we talked about your hobbies, and I kind of want to get back into them because I feel like there are some big movies that are out right now, Barbie and Oppenheimer. Uh, do you have a review or an opinion on those?
I have not seen Barbie yet. I will say though that the marketing for Barbie has been genius.
Yes.
I honestly, because there are a few
I've been
people
thinking the
who,
same thing.
yeah, because normally when like an actress or the director of a movie says something dumb, like about the political stance of the movie or whatever, people will it'll sour people to it. However, with Barbie, people went and saw it, and I actually think, and like I said, I haven't seen it, so I can't speak to I don't review movies that I haven't seen. I'll react to the trailer or
Yes.
stuff that the
Yeah.
filmmaker said, but I won't. But I don't want to review a movie I haven't seen. But coming at it from this perspective, I really think it shows because the main audience for Barbie is women, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it shows how because certainly in the marketing, Barbie is presented as very feminine, and it's Barbie Land is this very feminine world, and I've heard differing reviews on the movie itself, but I think it goes to show you just how much the women audiences were craving feminine figures.
Yeah.
And also, I think the brand recognition of Barbie, it's kind of like how the first Transformers, and that movie was definitely geared for men, particularly
Yeah.
men who had just turned 21. And but I think that's the secret. With Oppenheimer, I thought it was a masterpiece. I actually
Mm,
went to the IMAX to see it.
nice.
I hadn't seen an IMAX movie since The Dark Knight Rises. So I
Okay.
was another Nolan film, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, but I thought it was brilliant. It kind of had more of a slow burn. If you noticed, it did better in its second week than it did in its first week.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly think that is kind of the fault of Nolan himself. He is a brilliant director, but his movies, the way minus maybe the Dark Knight trilogy, but the way sometimes his movies are marketed as they're more like artistic endeavors as opposed to
Yeah.
making a cinematic feature. But I think
Gotcha.
with Oppenheimer, what got it through the door is just the brilliant cast. I mean, he
Yeah.
had Cecilian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr. is in it, and they are all amazing in it.
Yeah.
Emily Blunt is fantastic in it,
Mm.
and also the visuals. And I mentioned this in my review. This is not a spoiler for the film, but there's this incredible scene where it's when they're about to test the bomb for the first time, the atomic bomb,
Mm-hmm.
and they test it, and all these scientists and engineers, it goes off and they cheer. They did it. They split the atom, and because that's what they thought they were there to do, right? They're
Right.
all cheering because they did it. It was a success. But the music that's playing is sad,
Hmm.
and it really shows the juxtaposition of how they're celebrating because of their scientific achievement, and but then on the other hand, they gave the world this is a line in the movie, they gave the world the ability to destroy itself.
Hmm.
And Nolan is brilliant at stuff like that. His movies, they're smart, but they don't come off as pretentious. I don't know how he
Yeah.
strikes that, because I feel like there's a lot of filmmakers like Denis Villeneuve, and Ryan Johnson especially. Like they think they're smarter than their audience. So
Hmm.
Dune being an exception with Denis Villeneuve, but I really felt like this with Blade Runner 2049. It was trying to be smarter than the audience.
Hmm.
Well, then it doesn't do well at the box office, right?
Right.
It's and also his movies are incredibly slow. He thinks that movies being slow is the same as contemplation, and it's just not. But Nolan has this ability to make smart movies without them feeling pretentious,
Hmm.
and I think that's what pushes him over. And
Yeah.
if you have an IMAX theater in your neighborhood, go see it in IMAX. It
I
was a
heard so
spectacle.
I heard something really interesting. I actually haven't seen Oppenheimer yet. But I heard something really interesting on a video, and it was how it was shot
Mhm.
and the aspect in which it was shot tried to mimic that of what like was shot in the 30s and 40s.
That's pretty amazing. I hadn't heard that fact specifically, but I did hear they used all practical effects and only use CGI to enhance those effects. And
Yeah.
you can tell,
Yeah.
if you've seen any movie over the past 10 years, you can tell when it's a
Yeah.
practical effects movie versus one that's heavy on CGI.
Yeah.
So I think Warner Brothers, because they kind of chased him away, I think that was a mistake on their part. They lost him being Nolan. I
Yeah.
think they should have tried to keep him around, because it is I even tend to like movies people don't like I like his movie Tenet. I like his movie um with Matthew McConaughey. The title is escaping me for some reason, but the sci-fi movie he did about time. I tend to like he's my favorite film director that's active at the moment.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I sometimes I tend to overpraise his movies, but I really enjoyed it.
You have a man
So
crush. It's okay.
yeah, for me, it's yeah, and you can definitely tell, because like normally these last couple of years have been weird for me. So like normally I would be excited for something, say like Transformers Rise of the Beast. I haven't even seen Transformers Rise of the Beast. Transformers was here. Just as proof, Transformers was actually, along with Batman, one of the first things that got me into pop culture. When I lived in a small town in Vidor, there was a local channel that reran the old 80s cartoon in the 90s. So that was kind of my first exposure to Transformers. And
Yeah.
then later, of course, Beast Wars came along, and that ran on, at the time it was UPN. Now it's the CW. See, I think the WB and UPN merged. That's how CW came around. But it was very and so seeing the Generation 1 Transformers meet the Beast Wars Transformers in a screen, you would think I'd be jumping up and down and lying at the movie, but I really wasn't. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not really excited for this movie because I just don't trust Hollywood to tell that story correctly.
Yeah, yeah. And I totally echo with what you said. I haven't seen Barbie yet, but the marketing buzz around it, not only like, oh, everything's pink, which also makes me laugh that they like ended up using all of the world's like backup of that color pink. If you guys didn't know that, there you go. and they like made pink a shortage filming that movie with pink paint. But all of the brand partnerships have been so interesting. Like they have it with Cold Stone, they have it with like what? Like, and what was the other one? I think I was walking in the mall and it was like Cotton On. They had a brand partnership with like all of these like spanning what Progressive has a brand partnership with them.
Hot Topic. Like when was Barbie ever in Hot Topic?
Yeah, that like the entire span of it was just like absolutely crazy. And I heard this and I'm like Googling it just to like justify or like to reassure that I heard this correctly. That Mattel has 14 movies in the works.
Oh, I have heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There a lot of same with Nintendo after the success of the Super Mario Brothers movie. I'm worried though, and Midnight's Edge also expressed this. It's another pop culture YouTube channel, as well as Jester Bell. She's a collaborator that I work with. Will Hollywood learn the right lesson from Barbie? Probably not. Like they didn't learn the right lesson. You know, Green Lantern comes out at the same time the Dark Knight trilogy is coming out. It flops. Superman Return flops. The Dark Knight Rises comes out. It's a huge smash hit. I know people have it. I love the Dark Knight Rises, but what happened was as a result of that, and then also the MCU's success, is then Warner Brothers said, okay, people want a dark, gritty sort of superhero movie. They're kind of tired of the fluff. So who can we make dark? Oh, how about Superman? No, that's a terrible idea. That's the wrong lesson to take away from the success of the Dark Knight trilogy and the MCU. You know, so I think that they won't learn the right lesson. And I think, and you know, it's so funny because I've heard like conflicting reviews. Like one reviewer was like, Barbie, it's nothing but feminist propaganda. But then Michael Knowles, the guy I used to work with, he thought that it was secretly coded for more conservative values. And I honestly think it's in the eye of the beholder when when you're having people on the same wavelength saying, say two different things. I think it's going to, and also Greta Gerwig, I've not seen all of her films, so I can't say this. She's only made 5 movies. If I was to wager an opinion, because I've seen interviews with her and stuff, the director of Barbie, for those of you who are like, who's Greta Gerwig? When I said her name, I understand. With her specifically, I think she is genuinely interested in telling a good story. Now, whether she sprinkles in some politically correct nonsense in there, fine. All of Hollywood is doing that. You can filter that out yourself.
Right.
So, but it seems to me like she is genuinely wanting to tell a good story. And that's actually a rarity in Hollywood these days. You've got all these trendy, like J.J. Abrams, who had a great start as a director. And then you just see him, he gets bought into the whole, oh, we have to put messaging in our films because the audience is too stupid to not be an istophobe, whatever or not be a bigot, however you want to frame it. I think that, that kind of mindset really hurts Hollywood.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at like what other movies she did. But also when I'm like Googling this, I just type in her name. I type in her name, nothing else. My Google screen is now pink, and there are sparkles that go across the screen when I type in her name, the director's name. Not even, I didn't mention anything of Barbie. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about like marketing mastery.
Okay, now that can be a gamble, because whenever I remember there was just think about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I don't think they had the same level of marketing that Barbie had, but still high marketing. You saw Ant-Man everywhere. I went to Wind Theater and they were selling cups that had Ant-Man. That's not unusual for a theater, but I'm just saying
Right.
that's expensive,
Yeah.
right? That was a total flop. So with Disney, the gamble didn't work. I don't know what production company made Barbie, but with Barbie, it did
Yeah.
work. So it's
Yeah.
always a gamble when you do stuff like that.
Yeah. Anyways, Greta Gerwig did Little Women in 2019, Lady
Lady Bird,
Bird
that
in
one was very. I haven't seen
2017.
that one, but I heard it's very good. I don't know.
Yeah. Frances Ha, I think
Don't
it is.
know.
I don't know. 2012, White Noise. These look like indie films. But then also like probably more famously is No Strings Attached in
Yeah.
2011. So, yeah, and I think
Interesting.
it
That's a very broad
right.
filmography.
I was thinking the same thing.
Oh, and
Um,
Interstellar is the name of the Nolan film I couldn't remember with Matthew
okay, there
McConaughey. It's
you go.
Interstellar.
Interstellar. Very cool. Yeah, I love like nerding out about this because while like I can appreciate movies, like I also like when you're like saying these names, I'm like, yeah, totally, absolutely know who that is, not
well,
at all. But
well,
I give credit to people who do.
I think there's, and this is because of sort of growing up in the 90s, there was this huge satanic panic. There was one in the 80s, and that one actually was real. Like, you had the son of Sam prowling the streets.
Right,
The country had just come off the Zodiac killer
right,
attacks, and the 80s actually had a reason for sort of a moral panic.
right,
And also just came off the hippie movement with the Summer of Love, and
right.
everything that went wrong there. And but then when the 90s come along, relatively things had calmed down as a culture.
Yeah.
And but there was still like these moral panics. And one of the reasons I started talking about anime is there was a big backlash against Pokemon when I was growing up.
Yes, I
Pokemon is
remember
just,
that.
oh, there you go.
And
It
it's kind of
was,
resurging a little bit too.
yes.
Like
And
with Pokemon Go, that kind of also brought
right,
up the
right. Yeah,
conversation
exactly. The
again.
game, it was very weird because at the time I was too young to understand it. I was very young when Pokemon premiered on Kids WB as it was on my network, but I wasn't allowed to watch it, but I didn't care because the Ninja Turtles were just one click over. So I just clicked over to watch the Ninja Turtles on a different network.
Yeah.
But I grew up with kids who were like punished because a friend of theirs gave them a Pokemon card and they brought it home. There was this book that came out that had a whole chapter dedicated to Pokemon, and I actually did a video. I recut it and re-released it recently, but it's called "Should Christians Watch Anime?"
Mm,
And honestly, anime is an interesting bird because it comes from a different country, and I think that's sort of what is also happening. And it comes from Japan, and Japan has societal problems just like the United States does. And sometimes that translates into their art. And so, yes, there are anime that I don't watch,
right.
and they have anime with some of the most vile, disgusting stuff. But like with something like Pokemon, that is specifically geared towards children. I think someone had said that the first season, which was called the Orange Island Quest or something like that was more geared toward teenagers. But then they realized, oh my gosh, kids are watching this. So they actually dumbed it down even more
Right.
so than it already was. And
Yes.
even the new series, I think it's called Pokemon Journeys. Even that one, I watched like one episode of it. It's definitely meant for kids. There's like
Yeah.
barely any violence in it, other than the Pokemon fighting. There's no gratuitous anything in it at
Hmm.
all. And with me, I got introduced to anime through Gundams, which is a mech series.
Okay.
It's men pilots piloting these giant robots. It's very
Yeah.
Pacific Rim ripped it off. It's for those of you who may not know what Gundam is, it's Pacific Rim is a rip of Gundam, and that's how I got introduced to it. And then from there, I started watching Dragon Ball Z, Sword Art Online, Black Clover, all of these different Fairy Tale, all of these different titles, and it's interesting because Japan is only, I think, 10% Christian,
Hmm.
but there are Christians who work in the manga and anime industry. Christians created Superbook, which was an anime about these kids they had this computer program that would sort of suck them into a Bible story, and they would like travel along with Abraham. And
Oh,
I used to watch that as a kid. I didn't know it
cool.
was an anime. It was on TBN.
Okay.
Uh, and then they had a spin-off of Superbook called The Flying House, almost an identical premise, except the whole house would lift as opposed to the kids getting sucked into the
Okay.
the computer. Another one is Trigun. Now that one is a little violent, but the creator of Trigun is a Christian. He's very outspoken about his faith. And so when people want to blanket say all anime is bad, I remember there was a recent conservative commentator who said this. He's like, anime seems demonic to me. Well, that's kind of an insult to the Christians over there who are working on these things.
Yeah.
And also, I just find that when
blanket statements rarely work.
Exactly. So if you're going to say, I'm not going to let my kids watch, what's the most benign CGI movie ever? Let's say Toy Story. If you're going to say, I'm not going to let my kids watch Toy Story because Sausage Party exists, that's an incredibly ignorant statement, in my opinion.
Right.
It's
right.
Or what's that new one that just the Wing Feather Saga? I'm not going to let my kids watch the Wing Feather Saga because I don't like Fritz the Cat, which is, for those of you who don't, Fritz the Cat is a rated R animated film. I do not advise you to watch it at all.
Fair enough.
But anyway, it's very. I find like you said, blanket statements like that just don't make sense to me. But
yeah,
that's why, because I feel like there's this blank spot with pop culture where Christians want to go as soon as they see it. When if you
So, all of that to say.
all that to say, I really hope that Christians aren't so prickly to pop culture. Be smart. Look at the rating. There's books now. They especially, look. I remember there was this big thing when Deadpool came out. Parents were mad because it was rated R, but they took their kids to see it anyway. What did you expect? It was rated R.
Yes, exactly.
Look at the rating. TV shows now have ratings. TVY, TVY7, TV14. When I was not a teenager, I was not allowed to watch TV14 television shows.
Yep.
That's how parents should raise their children. So that's one thing I always say on my website is be aware, know the rating, because parents, that's your responsibility.
Yes.
So, but that's and that goes along with pop culture. Know what your kids are watching. And read the reviews.
Yeah, for sure. And we don't have to go down this tunnel, but did you review Mindhunter on Netflix?
No, I did not review it. I did watch it though, and if you want a little mini review, I will say I thought it was a brilliant TV show. Yes. I'm angry Netflix canceled it to make Tall Girl 2.
I know. Okay. Anyways, I loved that show. Also, because I'm like, my master's is in psych, and so Mindhunter, and then Fox had this old show in the early 2000s called Lie to Me.
Oh, I loved Lie to Me.
I loved it, and they canceled it. My gosh. Anyways, those things go.
Lie to Me at least had a longer run than Mindhunters.
Yeah. They said Mindhunter was like really expensive to produce too, but I also.
Well, like I said, take the money from those dumb teen dramas that you keep making and give it to Mindhunter.
Yes, so good. Anyways, thank you so much, Jake, for joining us, talking all things. We've really covered the spectrum. We covered abortion and date nights and movies. So, that I feel like this was like a solid episode in that regard. One thing I always like to ask our guests when we have them on is, what is one thing that our listeners and our audience they're listening to this and they can walk away from their phone or their computer and go put into action to help them grow their faith and grow closer to God? What is that one thing?
Read all you can. My parents made sure I was a reader and gave me books to read. And don't just read within your sphere, read outside of it as well. Not if you're listen to Holy Spirit will guide you, but don't just read your favorite two authors over and over again. Try to find other resources. There are many amazing study books that will just change your life. I have a list of books that have changed my life, and whenever someone approaches me with a certain problem, I can say, "Hey, I have a book for that."
I always do that
definitely
too.
Do that. Yeah, always do that. It's just don't stop reading. It's a practical way. If you don't like to read, find it on Audible or some other audiobook resource.
Yes, I completely agree. Jake, where can people find you? You kind of already said it, but let's just wrap it up again just for those who might have missed it.
You can find me on YouTube at Studio Jake. My website is studiojakemedia.com, where you can also link to my own books. I write fiction. I've got 3 books out now. So
Awesome.
There's a big thing on the top of my website that says buy my books. So you can also find those there.
There we go. And they'll all be linked in the show notes as well. Thank you, Jake, so much for joining us. And don't forget to subscribe, leave those 5-star reviews, and we will catch you guys next week on the next episode.